Telephone number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. In the first hour, I kind of explained a little bit about my motivations for interviewing libertarian candidates. This one in particular, Lee Evans. He's a libertarian running for Senate District 5. He joins us on the phone. Lee, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. Hanging out on a Monday. I'm a little wet from being out jogging this morning. The weather kind of stinks, but hey, it's all good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I hope it cools down even more. Muzzleloading season is this weekend, so I'm hoping hoping that the deer start moving. Lee, the reason I want to have you on, number one, is because a couple of weeks ago or a month or so ago, your opponent, Republican opponent in the upcoming, is Bob Ballinger, who beat Brian King in a close race.
Yeah,
I wanted to have you on because I made the mistake. I was playing the audio of Bob Ballinger saying no legislator in Little Rock is benefiting from being down there, and of course he got kind of laughed at pretty hard. And I said, hey, he's the senator elect, and that was wrong, and I corrected it a couple times, but I thought, as much as it drives the Marble Palace crazy that, we give libertarians a voice on the program, and we give anybody a voice, really, if they want to have an honest conversation and dialogue. I wanted to have you on, Lee, and I just want to start off, why are you running for Senate District 5?
It's where I live. I've lived in this part of the state for about 2 years now. I'm kind of a newcomer to this area, but I've lived in Arkansas all my life. And I see the everyday struggle of Arkansans. It's definitely not easy. And I'm really thankful for your reporting up there and just all the conduits, every single one of them. I know it's one big organization, and I listen to your program as much as I can, and I read it all and I soak it all up. And it's been a big influence on me, to be honest. I'm not kissing butt or anything. And it's once I got into this and saw how corrupt things were for my district and how far Ballinger is from representing anybody really in District 5, much less Arkansas, I just became filled with more and more fire. And I have a bit of a political activist background. I started out probably as more of a progressive when I was really young. I've seen that movement from the inside, and what's wrong with it from the inside, frankly.
Yeah, what do you think is wrong with progressivism?
Big government in general. I'll give them some credit in that they're honest about what they're for. And my big problem with the Republican Party in Arkansas is they claim to be for small government, yet we still get Obamacare. Yet we still get all these big government programs. Not just big government, but corruption that the likes of which I've just never seen before. And I've paid attention to politics my whole life, and there's always corruption, yeah. Mm-hmm. But big government is the snake that eats itself. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And, yeah, we need some government. I've been working on ballot access for the Libertarian Party for the last few years in a few different states, as well as Arkansas, and I helped get the term limits initiative on the ballot here as well. And so I've talked to a lot of people throughout the country and Arkansans, and look, most people are fairly moderate. And I think really what libertarians need to offer is a reasonable balance between those two sides of the coin without giving up on who we truly are, which is trying to get government out of your life and giving the individual a true chance to shine.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that is definitely a message that should resonate with young people, and I think it is. I think it's growing more and more in terms of the idea that, hey, liberty, voluntary cooperation is way, way, way better than forced cooperation. So when did you make the turn? What was it in your life where you said, hey, this progressivism is not for me? I think limited governments is better.
It was the gun issue that really, really bothered me. I actually grew up in kind of a Democrat home. I wouldn't say Democrat home. Let me rephrase.
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Paul. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And we're building a liberty machine here. We're so glad that you're with us. And you listening is just an act of construction, really. You're helping us build the liberty machine just by listening. We appreciate that. But if you want to contribute further or go further, you can always sound off via text message or phone call, 870-275-9799. Or feel free to go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as the YouTube channel. Well, so my lead story was going to be, when I got off the air yesterday and I started to plan on what I was going to talk about today, my lead story was going to be this video between Leslie Stahl of CBS News and President Donald Trump, when he says, I'm president and you're not. In the meantime, I'm president and you're not. I mean, it was, he refused to cave to the media pressure, the establishment media pressure, which is becoming the norm. I mean, that is President Donald Trump's style, and he just doesn't back down. But then you have this October surprise. Well, it appears to have been an attempt at an October surprise that just backfired entirely. Now, if you go look at some of the liberal outlets, you're not going to see that. But I'm talking, of course, about Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren. Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren has taken advantage of the advantages, the sensitivities of people when it comes to generally wanting to help minorities. And historically, she has claimed Native American heritage, and she has presumably gotten benefits. Now, this is not a surprise, meaning benefits in her job and academia and everything else. Now, this is not a surprise because you have to understand it's not a big leap here. You have the Democrat Party that normally uses a perceived victimized population, whatever that may be, and exploits them by getting them upset at another group of people for political power. This is normally what the left does. They use minority groups for political power to essentially inflate themselves up because there'll be some issue or some grievance and will never truly solve it, i.e. DACA, when Donald Trump was going to give them everything. They would have rather the illegal immigrants remain victims so that they could exploit them for political power and to maintain political power. No, we need to fix it. We'll fix it, we promise. But of course, it never gets fixed. In the meantime, you keep voting for the same person that promises to fix your problems based on dividing up Americans into groups. Anyway, this is what the left normally does. So it's not a giant leap for a leftist to also say, well, you know what? What if I claimed I was a minority and I exploited? It's just one step of exploitation. Exploitation further. Just one more step there to say, well, we are already exploiting for political power. Why not? I will exploit personally, even though I'm a white lady, I'm a white woman. I'll claim that I'm Native American, and everybody will. It'll be marked in the the documents of the school, the college, and I'll be the better for it. People will look on me as a victim. It turns out that Elizabeth Warren is 1/1000th of a victim. And, of course, she releases a DNA test saying, hey, listen, guys, I'm actually Native American. Of course, we read in the fine print that they didn't screen against Native Americans specifically, known tribes. Instead, they screened against, Peruvian, Mexican, and Colombian. That's the field, that's the spectrum they had to do. So essentially, based on that, Native American, whatever they want to call it, Senator Elizabeth Warren is no more Native American than the average white person is here in America today. That's what was pretty conclusively known throughout anybody that's going to look at this in an objective way pretty much instantly yesterday. And that did not stop some of the left from some very misleading headlines. For example, Joe, you don't have this, so just stick right where this is the Boston Globe story. But just hold off on that for a second. CNN, when the Boston Globe released their story, CNN, their headline was, Elizabeth Warren releases DNA test with, quote, strong evidence of Native American ancestry. Going over to the New York Times, headline, Elizabeth Warren's DNA results put Trump on defense, but also raise questions. Really? Puts Trump on defense. Really? Warren releases DNA results, challenges Trump over Native American ancestry. That would be NPR. You see how they're leaving out the fact that it's a laughingstock, what she's done? And there are people on the left, just so you know this morning, there are people on the left that know what a disaster this is, and they are really upset with Senator Elizabeth Warren for releasing this October surprise. That's what our whiteboard says in the studio this morning and for the rest of the week, because I would expect another October surprise real soon, maybe the declassification of the FISA documents so we can see how corrupt a few top-level Justice Department and FBI officials really were. Fingers crossed, everyone. Fingers crossed. But let's go ahead and go to the Boston Globe story. This is what it looks like. It just says Warren releases results of DNA test, and I'm talking about immediately. Immediately, people knew that this was a sham. But she tried to take a victory lap. She tried to say that she was vindicated from all of this. Then when everybody was turning against Elizabeth Warren, she starts to criticize Donald Trump by claiming that Donald Trump has made creepy physical threats against her. Let's see, they got another headline here. Democrats turn on Elizabeth Warren. That's a gem. I'm going to come back to that one because I want to get to the one where Native American tribes coming out against Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, the gem here is when it talks about the dearth of evidence. In the dearth of evidence, go to the Boston Globe story, and Joe, search for the phrase dearth, because it's buried in there. Buried in there is in the dearth of evidence is what it says, and you can find it if oh, you don't have the whole article. Yeah, click continue reading. Yeah, there we go. Have this other headline. Here, I'll find it so I can. Yeah, to make up for the dearth of evidence, right? DEARTH. To make up for the dearth of Native American DNA, Bustamante used samples from Mexico, Peru, and Colombia to stand in for Native American. What? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Oh, yeah, that really puts Donald Trump on the defensive. You know, he's called her Pocahontas. He's really on the defensive now because there's DNA evidence to show that she's anywhere between 1/64th and 1/1024th Native American. What do they call Native American? Well, they called Native American Mexico, Peru, and Colombian. Mexican, Peruvian, Colombian. Do you understand how ridiculous this is? And you got to ask yourself the question, did she really think she would get away with it? I mean, is there some other angle here we're not seeing? Again, Boston Globe. To make up for the dearth of Native American DNA, Bustamante used samples from Mexico, Peru, and Colombia to stand in for Native American. That's because scientists believe that the groups Americans refer to as Native American came to this land via the Bering Strait about 12,000 years ago and settled in what's now America, but also migrated further south. His report explained that the use of reference populations whose genetic material has been fully sequenced was designed for maximum accuracy. Maximum accuracy. Okay, well, that's weird because apparently actual Native American tribes have different definitions about whether or not you're accepted into the tribe or not. Because the Cherokee Nation has come out and blasted Elizabeth Warren. This headline, Cherokee Nation blasts Elizabeth Warren's DNA test as a mockery and, quote, inappropriate. So listen to this story over at Breitbart from John Nolte. On Monday, Warren released her DNA test results to the far-left Boston Globe's Annie Linsky, who has already had to issue 2 humiliating corrections. Now, we need to talk about those corrections, and we will here in just a second. Hoping to spin the results in the best way possible, Linsky botched the math on the DNA findings, naturally, in Warren's favor. The truth is that even if you believe the results, Warren might have anywhere from 1/64th to 1,024th Native heritage, which means she is as much Native heritage as the average white American, which means her claim to be a Cherokee has been debunked by her own DNA tests. Not vindicated, she has been debunked. Now, why is this a big deal? Because people are desperate to prove Donald Trump wrong. They can't stand it. He goes to these rallies, thousands of people. You've got lines 4 people wide, a mile long, who can't get into the building. Do you understand that the Democrat Party cannot fill arenas like this? And he gets up there and he calls her Pocahontas and everybody laughs. Oh, well, she really is what if she really is Pocahontas? It's 1/1000th, 1/1000th, even 1/64th. What are we talking about here? What's more, while some tribes are willing to accept 1/16th ancestry, they are not willing to do so through unreliable DNA tests. What they want to see is actual genealogy. And the truth is that Warren has no documentation to prove that her family has ever had an American Indian in her family. Warren points to her great-great-great-grandmother, O.C. Sarah Smith, as part Cherokee, but all the documentation of the time lists her as white. Hoskin continues, sovereign tribal nations set their own requirements for citizenship, and while DNA tests can be used to determine lineage, such as paternity to an individual, it is not evidence for tribal affiliation. The nation is especially angry over Warren using an inappropriate DNA test to claim any connection to the Cherokee Nation or any tribal nation. She claims specific lineage with the Cherokee Nation. Doing so is inappropriate and wrong, he writes, adding, it makes a mockery out of DNA tests and its legitimate uses while also dishonoring legitimate tribal governments and their citizens whose ancestors are well documented and whose heritage is proven. Hoskins closes with, Senator Warren is undermining tribal interests with her continued claims of tribal heritage. Boy, don't you know the left is getting upset about that. Again, why did she do this? Well, it's because Democrats think they have a right to exploit minorities. Period. They think they have a right to exploit minorities. They do it all the time to maintain political power, to gain political power. So why not claim you're a minority as well and benefit from that as well? See, it's not a big leap here. What Elizabeth Warren has done is a natural progression. And not to mention with the not to mention with the self-identity, right? Oh, you got that white lady who was identifying as a black woman. What? Are you kidding me? You got Bill Clinton who said, well, you know, I was really the first black president. I'm a white guy, but I was really the first black president. What? Are you kidding me? Well, see, it's a natural progression. We exploit the minorities. Everybody, if you're black, you got to vote Democrat. Oh, by the way, here's the white guy saying he's the first black president, and everybody's okay with it. It's a natural progression. These people think that they own minority populations in order to exploit them for political power and to maintain that political power. That is, to me, the real story here. Now that Elizabeth Warren has been proven, for sure, her own DNA test has proven her as a fraud, as a impersonator. She has been impersonating a Native American person for 20-something years, and she's a blonde-headed white lady from Massachusetts, okay? Like, it is, it's pretty ridiculous. We're going to take a break here. We're going to reset 870-275-9799. Back in just a moment.
My grandparents come from an age in Arkansas when everybody was a Democrat.
Yep.
And I'm sure you know this. This was Arkansas was all Democrat back then. You talk about Winthrop Rockefeller. My grandfather loved him, and last vote he voted was Obama before he died. And isn't
it weird that Rockefeller was a Republican and he comes here? We're all Democrats here in the state back in the day, and like 80% Democrat, and yet somehow Winthrop Rockefeller comes in and he's like, he's a Republican, but everybody votes for him. I think that's such an anomaly in history.
Well, it is really interesting, and to get back to what I was saying, I grew up in a household that I didn't really grow up around guns. My uncle was actually shot at a young age and lost his sight. He just passed away a few years ago, and that.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News, The Parent. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphi. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs, as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parent. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
For those of you out there listening, and it's at your fingertips, go ahead and go to the YouTube channel. We posted a separate video there of, well, what do we call it? We called it Asa undermines Trump Pence on communist China. That's what the official title of the video turned out to be. This is an effort to educate your friends on just, what goes on here in Arkansas. A lot of times people want to just claim that there's some sort of, unity, but I think it's worth noting that the Republican leadership here in Arkansas is conspicuous. It stands out compared to other states who have Republican leadership, and it's certainly, on this issue of communist China, is certainly odd considering what the Trump administration people say, well, Donald Trump is now the leader of the Republican Party. I don't think Arkansas has gotten that memo when it comes to trying to recruit Chinese businesses here in the state of Arkansas. Communist Chinese businesses. So, it's up at the YouTube channel right now, and you guys feel free to share it, blast it out there as much as you want, because it's a really good educational tool, just to highlight a difference between what's going on in D.C. What are the geopolitical goals? What's the United States attempting to accomplish versus what we're doing back here? That looks like it's an attempt to undermine, all because they might create 9 jobs here in the state at some point in the next 100 years. 100-year. Look up the 100-year plan, too, by the way. The phone number, 870-275-9799. Real quick, more on Elizabeth Warren. Let's talk about how the media screwed this up big time. We have, let's see, that was the Cherokee Nation. Here, the Boston Globe had to correct the story twice. Not once, but twice. The Boston Globe botched its math correction in its defense of Senator Elizabeth Warren, and how basically she's been exploiting Native Americans for decades. On Monday, the far-left outlet published the results of Warren's DNA test, something she has been under pressure to take after her repeated claims to be part Cherokee were debunked. President Trump regularly uses Warren's false claim of Indian ancestry to ridicule the senator, and now that she is eyeing a 2020 presidential run, she is hoping to clear things up. Unfortunately for Warren, the DNA test only proved she shares no more American Indian heritage than the average white American. The Globe, however, and reporter Annie Linsky published the story as a vindication of Warren's longstanding claim she is part Cherokee. The Globe also fumbled the math. At first, the Globe reported that Warren could be anywhere between 132nd and 512th Native American, which was a massive math error in Warren's favor. If the DNA test is correct, the truth is that Warren lands somewhere between 164th and 1024th. The Globe corrected its lower estimate sometime before 10:20 a.m. when readers noticed the update. Nearly 4 hours later, it has similarly corrected the math on its 6th-generation figure from 132nd to 164th, which puts Warren's most optimistic claim to be Native American below 2% of her DNA. Of course, they checked this against not current Native American tribes. They checked this against anyone who's got Mexican, Colombian, or Peruvian DNA, which is why the Cherokee Nation, a tribe she claims to be a part of or have lineage to, let's just say, has come out and said that this DNA test is basically a sham, and it's an embarrassment. You see that there. Due to a math error, a story about Elizabeth Warren misstated the ancestry percentage of a potential 10th-generation relative. It should read 1024th. This has gotten people absolutely ridiculing Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren, Massachusetts. And it's even made Democrats mad because they're like, October surprise? They're like, really? Democrat Elizabeth Warren? You're one of our own. And you're trying to put your presidential campaign, your potential presidential campaign, we got to win the House. We got to win the House. People are upset about this. It only is just, I mean, come on. We've got to turn out and vote. We got to win this thing. Back in a minute.
You know, my my grandparents come from an age in Arkansas when everybody was a Democrat.
Yep.
You know, and I'm sure you know this. This was Arkansas was all Democrat back then. You know, you talk about Winthrop Rockefeller. My grandfather loved him, and last vote he voted was Obama before he died. And isn't it
weird that isn't it weird that Rockefeller was a Republican and he comes here? We're all Democrats here in the state back in the day, and like 80% Democrat, and yet somehow Winthrop Rockefeller comes in and he's like, he's a Republican, but everybody votes for him. I think that's such an anomaly in history.
Well, it is really interesting, and to get back to what I was saying, I grew up in a household that I didn't really grow up around guns. My uncle was actually shot at a young age and lost his sight. And he just passed away a few years ago, and that's just to give you an idea of the attitude on guns that I grew up with. Not anti, just not really around it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so the way progressives kind of cast themselves is from the heart, and I think that's why you see so many kids on college campuses all around the country. That's what they're kind of clinging to, because they're seeing it from a heart level. And they need they need to see the perspective from the other side, and I really think they have. But it was the gun issue, Paul, that really kind of pulled me to the other side. And I really don't believe in there being any kind of restrictions, except if you're a violent criminal out there. Sure, we can restrict that. But other than that, we don't need any kind of gun restrictions. Arkansas doesn't need that, and that's frankly not what Arkansans believe in.
We're talking with Lee Evans. He's a Libertarian candidate for State Senate District 5 here in the state of Arkansas. You mentioned the corruption in Arkansas, which is great right now. We still don't know how far this is going to go, how high up it's going to go.
Yep.
You talk about how you think a lot of people might be fairly moderate, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. Just in terms of, we are at the point now, and tell me if you agree or disagree, I think we're at the point now in Arkansas where I can't really talk about the pitfalls of big government when it comes to welfare programs or dependency, or who really is the truly needy. We can't really have, I don't think, policy conversations the way we need to about tax policy, about regulatory reform, because at this point, I don't trust any of them to not be making some sort of side deals that if they do kill a regulation, that they're not somehow getting money on the side for doing it, or there's something hidden that we don't understand. Yep. I mean, that's how bad it is. So instead of being able to have these debates about how we
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Eight 870-275-9799. Democrats headline: Democrats turn on Elizabeth Warren over October surprise. Christina Wong over at Breitbart has a few tweets. Can we throw these tweets up on the screen here? Look at these tweets. I want you to understand something here. Jim Messina, isn't he associated with campaign? Isn't he a former Democrat campaign manager? Let's go to the Breitbart article, the one that says the Democrats have turned, and scroll down there. They've got some tweets posted there. Yeah, throw that one up there, right there. Look at this, folks. Jim Messina, argue the substance all you want, but why? 22 days before a crucial election where we must win the House and the Senate to save America, why did Senator Elizabeth Warren have to do her announcement now? Why can't Democrats ever stay focused? David Axelrod, an Obama guy. Scroll down. Pretty extraordinary video to surface even before you enter the race. It says, number one, Senator Elizabeth Warren is 100% running for president. Number two, she thinks the Pocahontas crap is a potential problem. Number three, she wants to dispose of it now, lest she be birtherized. The risk, I'm sure she considered. This elevates it. This is great. Yeah, exactly. It's like scroll down. Joe's having a meltdown over David Adams. Well, he's a leftist Obama guy. All right, keep going. Let's listen to some other Democrats here. Anna Navarro. Honestly, though, shouldn't Elizabeth Warren have waited 3 weeks to release her DNA results? They're tight races all over the country. Seems to me best use of time for any potential Democratic presidential nominee candidate right now is helping elect other Democrats. No. You've got to understand something. This is about personal political power. This is about me. That's what this is about, me. The release of Warren's test widely seen as a precursor to 2020 presidential run. And listen, there are more. Keep scrolling down here. What is this? Who is this? John Lockhart. Joe Lockhart. I think she sees it as a way to stand out from the crowd as standing up to and beating Trump. Yeah, right. Agree. Somebody else says, agree, but I wonder the timing. I assume she wanted to get it out of the way before candidates' 2020 announcements post-election, but Dems need to stay on message between now and November the 6th, and this seems like a distraction. Yeah, it really is, because she released a test that debunks her claim. Even Democrats know that she just released a test that is laughable, that she debunked her claim. She is not Cherokee. They wouldn't let her into their tribe based on this test. And, she's 1/1000th, anywhere between 1/64th and 1/1024th Native American. You understand how ridiculous that sounds? Oh, I'm vindicated. I didn't lie when I told everybody that I'm a Native American and I've used it to exploit a minority, to, put it on myself like I'm some sort of victim. I mean, it's really sad. Keep going. You have a former Google employee summed it up this way. I'm hard-pressed to find anything worse to talk about 3 weeks from the midterms than Bill Clinton's affairs or Elizabeth Warren's heritage. That pretty much sums it up how the Democrats feel. They know what's going on here. They know how bad they look after the Kavanaugh debacle. And this is the last thing that they needed. And this was this was weird. It was an Elizabeth Warren October surprise that is undermining everything the Democrats are trying to do right now. So we shall see. We shall see. What else do we have here? Yeah, I think that's it, right? I mean, that's it on the Elizabeth Warren thing for now. Folks, I want to tell you that this portion of the program is brought to you by Conduit for Commerce. Go over there right now and check them out. They're putting Arkansas small business first. Conduitforcommerce.org. That's conduitforcommerce.org. In this week's Conduit for Commerce policy segment, we want to highlight issue number 5. Issue number 5 is going to be on your ballot. Just go ahead and plan on all of these issues, 1 through 5 being on your ballot, even though some of them may get overturned and thrown out by the Supreme Court. Issue 5 is a big deal. It's about the minimum wage, and they want to increase the minimum wage here in Arkansas eventually to $11. And if you vote on it, small business owners, by 2020, you're going to be paying $11 an hour minimum in order to hire somebody. And for a state like Arkansas, that is ridiculous, considering that the highest minimum wage in the country is $11.50 up in the state of Washington. Washington and Arkansas, two very different places. So, for this policy segment, let's talk about why the minimum wage laws hurt instead of help. And by the way, this is by Hunter Rivet, who we interviewed last week. He starts out with a quote from Brian Kaplan. Supply and demand says that above-market prices create unsaleable surpluses, but that has not stopped most of Europe from regulating labor markets into decades of depression-level unemployment. That is what happens when the government gets involved in the market. That's the danger. He writes, Arkansas Issue 5, called the Minimum Wage Increase Initiative, will be up for consideration on the ballots this November. This would increase the state-mandated minimum wage from $8.50 to $11 an hour by 2021, incremented by $1 each year until that point. The group who is behind the measure, Arkansas or Arkansans for a Fair Wage, have stated, quote, the cost of groceries, housing, and other basics have gone up for years, but wages haven't come close to keeping up. By gradually raising Arkansas's minimum wage to $11 an hour, we can help hardworking people meet their basic needs. At the same time, we'll help small businesses by putting more money into people's pockets that they can spend on goods and services in our state, end quote. They couldn't be more wrong. Let's take each claim one at a time. Has the price of other basics gone up for years? Yes, but not as dramatically as one may think. For the past 40 years, the price of necessities such as clothing, food, shelter, energy, etc., has risen at just above 2% per year. Furthermore, individuals spend far less of a percentage of their income on necessities. About half as much of all that is earned is spent on basics as today compared to 50 years ago. People are spending less of their money to just get by, and the increase in the price of those necessities has been minimal. Have wages come close to keeping up? Now that we know the truth about cost increases in disposable income, it's easy to say that wage growth has been extraordinary. In the past 50 years, we have seen an average wage growth of around 6% and nearly 3 times the growth of the cost of basics. In addition, more individuals are working. The workforce in those same years expanded by 8%, all while experiencing a slight decrease in unemployment overall during that time. More people are working, and more of those people are making much larger incomes. Will this increase to $11 help hardworking Arkansans? Demonstrably, the answer is no. It will increase unemployment and drive inflation. States with no minimum wage laws routinely have the lowest unemployment, such as Switzerland, Hong Kong, Singapore. These governments are usually held up as economic exemplars for other reasons, as well as their unemployment is generally under 3%. The United States before FDR, Hunter Rivet writes, was able to hit 1.8% unemployment under the great deregulator Calvin Coolidge. When minimum wage laws were enacted in the West, unemployment shot through the roof. Artificial wage increases mandated by the government that are not in line with real economic growth, causing employers to fire workers, as they cannot pay for the increased wage. From the 1980s to today, states around the world saw unemployment jump to double digits with minimum wage laws in place. How is someone supposed to make a living wage if they are not even working? Now, who is hurt the most by these laws? Almost half of all minimum wage earners live with their parents. Now, think about that for a second. That's actually a really good point. That's who we're talking about here. Almost half of all minimum wage earners live with their parents, and most are in school in some way. Those who need the most training, work experience, and can find that by taking up a low-paying job and working their way up are the most hurt by these minimum wage increases. Unemployment for those under 25 has only increased historically. This is a direct result of minimum wage increases brought on by government coercion. Furthermore, the increasing inflation would continue to deter economic opportunity for those needing it most. If a supplier is forced to pay his youngest, greenest, and least valuable worker more, must he not pass on this cost in the form of price increases? This has been historically true following all artificial wage increases. This does not help small businesses, as it does not put more money into the pockets of those who could spend it. It will only increase unemployment, raise inflation rates and prices, and decrease the buying power of the dollar. The arguments for government-mandated minimum wage are not rooted in fact or economic rationality. They would do more harm than good and only hurt those they purport to help. At Conduit for Commerce, we wish to educate individuals on economic reality and hope this policy short will educate people on the potential impacts of passing Issue 5 and raising the minimum wage. Very good piece here by Hunter Rivet. issue 5 minimum wage. You got to tell your friends, vote no. You got to tell your friends. I mean, listen, people assume it's just going to help them. It's not going to help them. Everybody in your sphere of influence. You go to the water cooler, you got to tell people this is ridiculous. You know, if you know anything about small business, just because you're making above minimum wage, by the way, and it goes up to $11, that doesn't mean you're going to make any more money either. People assume that it's going to benefit them. That's not necessarily the case. The point in this piece about how prices, listen, it's essentially a tax increase on businesses. The government is asking you to pay more money, and you're going to raise your prices. You raise prices, and then the people that you're supposed to be getting more money from the minimum wage increase, they eventually can't. They're in the same situation. There's no more prosperity generated by raising the minimum wage on, from December 31st to January 1st. There is no more prosperity. There's no more cars built. There's no more voluntary cooperation, economic activity. There's no more homes built. Prosperity is based on essentially work ethic and access to resources, and intelligence. That's basically it. You're no more prosperous. There's been nothing more created. There's no more wealth that's actually been generated when you just say arbitrarily, we're richer today than we were yesterday, but nothing else has changed. It's insane. It's mental. But you got the Democrats and the left who managed to get this on the ballot, and Arkansans got to stand up and say no, or businesses here in this state are going to really be hurting. So that is the Conduit for Commerce policy segment. We're going to reset here, going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Sound off on the YouTube channel, Conduit News. We're broadcasting live right there. Subscribe. Click the little bell to receive notifications, and we'll be back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Govern ourselves right now. I think both Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Conservatives, Liberals, whatever you want to call them, we have to demand for honest government. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what Trump is kind of exposing here. I think that's why you're seeing such a shakeup in the status quo, is because I think it feels like our government at the national level is becoming a little bit more transparent, a little bit more honest. And I would love for that to happen here in the state of Arkansas. What are your thoughts on that, Lee?
Oh, man. Well, you're so right. because we can't talk about anything else till we deal with the corruption. Like you said, we don't know what they're doing, and there may be more to come. And somehow Ballinger is at the center of all this, and nothing has came out that's 100% definitive evidence of criminal wrongdoing. And, you know,
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Well, the Democrat Party has come a long way in enacting double standards on itself. Do you remember the headline long time ago? Well, long time ago in my world is probably like 6 months. I mean, that to me is a long time in the news. But I think this was a year or so ago. Joe, I think you remember this. Do you remember when they edited out the social justice warriors? They were doing a revisal of Peter Pan, the musical Peter Pan, or the stage show. I don't know if it's the musical or not, but it's the one where they, you got to have a girl, you got to have a woman play Peter Pan because she's on the fly system. And you need somebody that's lightweight and can do some acrobatics and stuff. And it's always really bothered me because it's like Peter Pan, come on. But anyway, it's a kids show or whatever. And I think on Broadway or off Broadway, wherever it was, they had to take out that song "Ugga Wugga 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 Ugg." Remember, it was the one about when the Lost Boys and Peter Pan and Wendy and they meet the Native Americans, and it's just like ugh. Go go look up that song until it's contraband. In our society today, Blazing Saddles, you're not going to be able to watch that ever again. And if they find it in your home, the SS is going to show up and, black bag you, I guess. Yeah, but go look that up on YouTube. The Native American song Peter Pan. They had to they sang some other song or something, or you couldn't sing Ugga Wugga or Ugg or whatever that Native American song was. Well, I mean, see, even me calling it that's not a Native American song. That was cultural appropriation. Or whatever they want to say.
Have you ever read the book Fahrenheit 451?
I have not.
Okay, so the premise of the book is it's a dystopian society in the future. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's called Fahrenheit 451 is because the 451 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature at which the human flesh burns. Okay?
Gross.
So, but that's not the premise of the book. I mean,
it's just creepy,
So the dystopian society is that information is toxic. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the more you know,
the more of a threat you are,
and the bigger of a problem you become.
Yeah, that's why slaves couldn't read, or they wouldn't allow slaves. It was a crime to teach a slave to read.
Yeah. So the fire department, firemen, were not people who put out fires, but people who started fires. And their houses that they lived in were specifically designed to never catch fire. So what they would do is if they were told that there were books at this house, they would go to it and they'd burn it. Like they'd collect it all and then kerosene everywhere and burn it.
I think we're really close. I think the left is really close to wanting to burn books at this point, wanting to burn information that makes them feel bad or violates their safe spaces.
I was trying to remember for a second where I was going with this, but no, this is exactly what's happening with things that offend the left and offend anybody. It's immediately becoming the left is the firemen, and stuff like Blazing Saddles is the contraband that we cannot have.
Yeah. Well, so and I agree with you, Joe. And the double standard here is if you when it comes to this Peter Pan show and they had to revise Ugg or whatever that song is called, but these same people who are outraged by that song and needed to edit it out of history, edit it out of our art. They're the same ones that are going to be making excuses for Elizabeth Warren, saying she is not exploiting Native Americans. She's one of them. She's one of them, regardless of the Cherokee Nation saying, no, she's not. Regardless of the fact that 1,024th? Are you kidding me? And there's nobody that's going to say, no, yeah, sure, she should be president. Yeah, that's fine. And of course they're going to say, well, if you try to say that this is disqualifying for her, you'll get the liberals to come down off their high horse, and they'll be like, well, yeah, you may be right, but Donald Trump, that's what they're going to say.
But, okay, so one of the things that you said before on the show is if it wasn't for double standards, the left wouldn't have standards.
Yes.
Well, look at this. So you get the Blazing Saddles, which is comedic gold mine.
Yeah, and it was actually anti-racism by using, by making fun of racists. Yeah. That's essentially what it was.
But so you get Blazing Saddles, which is like taboo now, but then you get the left's version of comedy gold in SNL, which is completely kosher. Like there's no problems with it. It's always perfect.
Yeah, that's true.
And so they're trying to replace actual comedy with garbage.
They're afraid of freedom. The left is afraid of freedom on all fronts, whether it's the Silicon Valley totalitarians. Now that they think that too much freedom on the internet is why they're losing because their ideas are being rejected. They want to redefine what's funny and what's not funny. They don't want you to decide, right? That's why you have comedians, even socially liberal comedians or leftist comedians that won't go on college campuses because they're like, we can't tell our jokes. I mean, there are plenty of comedians that I can laugh at or laugh at their jokes, knowing that, yeah, they probably disagree with me on a lot of things when it comes to limited government versus big government. When the left starts to go after this freedom of thought on all areas, it's just very dangerous, and I think we are close to them just wanting to clamp down on all information, Boston Globe, this is from some verified guy on Twitter. Oh, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. So the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, Sagar Enjeti, writes, Boston Globe, due to a math error, a story about Elizabeth Warren misstated the ancestry percentage of a potential 10th-generation relative. It should be 1/1024th. The first reply on this tweet is gold. Some guy named Bogey writes, I'm 1/1024th single malt Scotch. Be careful, Bogey. We don't want you appropriating Scottish culture, okay? If you're not Scottish, you probably shouldn't drink Scotch, or the totalitarian SS of the left will come and, they'll assemble around your house. It'll look like a mob. It'll sound like a mob. But just trust us, it's not a mob. You can't use the M word. You can't call them a mob. The phone number is 870-275-9799. Elizabeth Warren melted down on Twitter in the wake of her. Really, she's the butt of a lot of jokes right now because she released a DNA test to vindicate her Native American heritage, and it actually, it debunked her claim. And Joe says I don't need to say that she's the butt of jokes because that is somehow sexual harassment. Senator Elizabeth Warren launched a bizarre Twitter rant late Monday afternoon following the disastrous rollout of her DNA test. And so this is what she said. We all know why real Donald Trump makes creepy physical threats about me, right? He's scared. He's trying to do what he always does to women who scare him. Call us names, attack us personally, shrink us down to feel better about himself. It may soothe his ego, but it won't work. Joe, will you pull this article up and play the Twitter video? It's Elizabeth Warren has meltdown. I want you to see the video she links to. She links to this video and is claiming that Donald Trump is making creepy physical threats about her by saying this. Go ahead and click on it whenever you're ready, Joe. Because to me, it's not creepy. I don't understand how she says this is a physical threat. Listen to this if we have time.
What about the money that you told her you would...
you mean if she gets the nomination in a debate where I was going to have her tested? I'll only do it if I can test her personally. Okay, that will not be something I enjoy doing either.
How is that a physical threat? I mean, these people are crazy. Oh, man. I don't know. I'd like to see, like, Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump, in, like, the Princess Bride situation with, like, Vicini and the Man in Black. Oh, what in the world could that be? Oh, I could have sworn I saw something. We're going to take a break. We got one more hour coming your way next.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
I have to emphasize that. But, you guys have done some great reporting on Senate Bill 5 that he sponsored, which also Hutchison sponsored in the House, who is currently under indictment, which got rid of your right to a jury trial pre-dispute when signing a finance contract. So that means if you don't read the little fine print when you sign any kind of finance contract in Arkansas, you don't have any right to a jury trial if something happens related to that contract. And, I've had a little pushback from people saying, hey, I should be able to sign my jury rights away. Okay, that's fine if that's how you feel. But in my opinion, the Arkansas Constitution, it protects your right to a jury trial inviolate.
So you think maybe that legislation was maybe predatory?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like
I think it's there for the nursing home industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's preying. Well, I know Jerry Cox. He tried to stop them from being able to insert that into nursing home contracts. I think he successfully got them to take that out, but it's still stuck for the financial institutions.
Oh, well, that's good. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
Well, God bless him. I'm glad he did that. And that's a big deal. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of stuff that Ballinger's involved with. And you've done great reporting, and you've questioned him yourself on it. And I don't even like to have to run this kind of political campaign where it looks like I'm attacking or smearing somebody. I'm not. These are verifiable sourced facts, not just from you.
Yeah.
This is from a lot of different media organizations throughout Arkansas.
Well, it can be an attack and not a smear. I would separate those two. I mean, I think
fair.
I think you have to, everything's going to be perceived based on who what your perspective is. If you're the recipient, if you're not. But yeah, the fact is, talk a little bit about this because we still really don't know what's going to happen with what we're going to find out with the Ecclesia College thing. You had all these legislators giving all of this money to Ecclesia College. You got 3 people behind bars as a result of that. And we still don't know exactly what all that taxpayer money, like we haven't done an audit. We don't really know what's going to happen and that sort of thing. And
why haven't we done an audit yet?
Well, it's a great question. I think there may be some movement to try to get some information at this point, but it just doesn't seem right. And the fact that all this was done, this is what's so sad to me, is that ecclesia is a Greek word for church. This is a Christian institution that we're having text messages about whether or not they need to use the medical marijuana fund, which they thought would have been evil, but they're going to use evil for good, and direct all that tax money to college. And I know as a libertarian, we can talk about marijuana, but you know what I mean? It was just it was like the college itself was no different than the schemes that we read about in government,
Oh, it's not. And they're using the color of religion, the politicians, and I guess the college to dupe people, and that's so wrong on so many levels. Arkansas is a Christian state, and it really, really bothers me that they're using that to just hustle this money in from the taxpayers. So obviously, I'm against all kinds of gift funds. Legislators should not just have access to money like that to do whatever they want with. All money needs to be voted on and debated on. Every single cent.
I agree.
And I know you agree with that.
Yeah.
I loved what Brian King had in there. He had this great Medicaid disclosure bill that would have helped big time. Ballinger killed it at the last second. And you've done good reporting on that too again. So, it's I could go on and on. The corruption is just crazy. And yeah, we can talk about marijuana, sure. You probably know how I feel. I don't want any kind of rules on it. We don't need a medical marijuana commission. And it's just kind of funny that Ballinger's law partner, Travis Story, is on the commission. And Ballinger's getting all these donations from, and you can look it up. Anybody can look this up. He's getting donations from these dispensaries. And they're somehow getting approved And I want to backtrack a little bit. I don't know if they got approved or not, but he has gotten donations from them. It's just there's so much funny business going on. We've just really got to vote out all incumbents, get some people up there with a good head on their shoulders. You know, I'm committed to
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Sorry, I was just listening to the Ugawug Wah. I figured it out. I was listening on YouTube to the the band Peter Pan song. You can't perform that on stage anymore because it appropriates Native American culture, or it's offensive to Native American culture. Ugawug Wah. I was just listening to that, because of course the left is really upset about that, but they're totally fine with Elizabeth Warren. They're good on that. They're good on Elizabeth Warren, and being a Native American when it's proven now that she's not. She's just as Native American as you or I are, as a white person, rather, as an average American white person. We talked about that last hour. You can get the podcast over at conduitnews.com. All right, let's get to our guest. We have with us here on the phone, calling in. We have Wade Andrews on the phone with us. He's a Republican candidate running in House District 5, running against a Democrat incumbent by the name of David Fielding. Wade, welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, so Wade Andrews, it's great to have you on. I wanted to, just highlight this race here because, there are examples where Republicans are challenging Democrat incumbents. So what can you tell us about this race? Why did you decide to run?
Well, I saw an opportunity to make a change, make an impact, to serve people. My opponent has been in this office for almost 8 years now, 4 terms, and everybody said District 5 is one that Republican cannot win. I said, let me give it a shot. Let me give it a go. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten a lot of support, and I'm ready for Election Day.
Tell us about where the district is, because we got a statewide audience here. They may not know geographically where District 5 is.
Yeah, so we're down here in South Arkansas. It's I don't get a whole county, but I get the gerrymandered parts of Ouachita, Columbia, Nevada, and Lafayette counties.
Okay. Yeah, that is down there in South Arkansas for sure. So tell us, tell us why Republican. Why did you decide to run as a Republican? What changes would you hope to make if you were elected?
Well, I'm definitely not a Democrat. I've been endorsed by the NRA, Arkansas Right to Life. I am pro-life, pro-economic growth. I believe in small government. I believe taxation is theft. I believe that my opponent has done zero good for South Arkansas. Time and time again, we see South Arkansas being treated like the redheaded stepchild of Arkansas. And I want to be up there and be an actual voice for South Arkansas.
So, that's extremely interesting when you say that taxation is theft. I agree with that premise. It really is. It kind of, I do believe in some taxes. I'm sure you do as well. But it's the people. The businesses. We're taxed to a point where the government, they seem to always come back and want more of it, and yet we can point to so many aspects of waste. You see that corruption going on where they're stealing it. Makes me think that we should advocate for less taxes just on the basis of giving them less money to steal from us. I mean, we got people going to jail. What are your thoughts on some of the corruption and the scandals that have been going on in Arkansas politics?
I think it's awful. If you get into this business to just want kickbacks, you have something morally wrong with you. Everybody who enters into public service wants to do just that, serve the public. And I think if you want to get in here for personal gain, then you might as well stay in the private sector.
We're talking with Republican candidate for state representative in House District 5. His name is Wade Andrews, again, down there in South Arkansas. Wade, your opponent, again, Democrat David Fielding. Have you paid attention to some of his votes? Do you have any specific votes on specific bills that he has made that you really disagree with?
So last general session, I think there was 8 or 10 bills he actually sponsored himself. I don't believe they ever got out of committee. And before that, there might have been 1 or 2, but nothing substantial. There has been no substantial legislation. And he goes around this campaign trail touting his record, so to speak. And you look at it, all it is handing out GIF money. And I don't believe that's a record I would be proud of.
Wow. Yeah, in this climate, absolutely not. And of course, I'm sure the people he's handed that general improvement money to, which is taxpayer dollars, I bet they're having some pressure to vote for him, right? I mean, that's a lot of what that money is there for. I mean, it has gone to good purposes before when people are not, skimming off the top. But a lot of times you give that money away so that those people, those constituency groups will continue to vote for you.
That's exactly right. He's touted he's helped fire departments and a couple police departments. And while that money's good for that type of revenue, I was talking with one firefighter that he gave money to help build a new station. The firefighter said, well, we got a new station, but we don't have the money to really keep the lights on or pay the insurance on it. So my thinking is, instead of building a new building, shouldn't we think about sustaining or, keeping revenue for them so they can stay in business, protecting citizens, true first responders, instead of, new buildings are great, but it doesn't exactly help all the time.
Talk a little bit about, if you don't mind. Sorry, I was distracted just for 2 seconds. I just had this text message. Can we talk a little bit about what it's going to be like for you? Let's assume that you win, okay? And you go you go to Little Rock, and there's when you have a new person that goes to Little Rock, it's I don't know, it's a big learning curve, so I'm told, and you go down there, and there's a whole lot of lobbyists, a whole lot of lobbyist events and everything like that. Have you thought about the idea, and I love to ask candidates this, especially when it's their first time to run for office in terms of going to the state house, have you thought about what that environment could do to you potentially in a negative way? Because I think there's a lot of people we've seen in these court cases in the corruption, people go down there or go up there, in your case, from South Arkansas, and they can change. And so have you thought about, how careful that you need to be if you are elected to office?
Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, you're too good for this, don't do it. You'll come out worse than you go into it. My thinking all that is, I'm thick-skinned. I have a good moral compass, and my Bible to lead me the way. I know right from wrong, and I'm not going to do anything that would jeopardize my future or put me in danger of criminal charges. Every lobbyist up there wants his or her own agenda to get through, and you just have to say no sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with you. And I'm glad that you've thought about that. I'm glad you've got people in your life that are saying, "Hey, don't do this." That may be the best. That may be the best thing, is to listen to those people. Just in terms of their skepticism, I think they're doing that because they care about you and they see what the environment is. And as long as you go down there, I think as long as you go down there, understanding that it's not rainbows and sunshine, that you do have to be guarded. I think that's what can make a good state representative or a good senator for the people. Let me ask you this: Wade Andrews, Republican candidate, state representative, District 5 down in South Arkansas. What is it that you do now in terms of private sector or employment? What's your business or your job?
So I'm an auctioneer. I do mainly estate auctions and a few storage auctions. Like if you ever watched Storage Wars on TV, it's basically that without the camera. Self-employed is what I do. I also work on my family farm, raise cows.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. So you have and if you're elected, do you plan on still maintaining those jobs and as well as serving the people?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I always like coming home from the farm. It's relaxing. It can be hard work most times, but I enjoy it. I really do.
Yeah.
And auctioneering, they say, oh, you talk fast. Well, you talk fast for about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. The rest of the time you're prepping for an auction or doing paperwork or doing something else. But I chose that because I wanted a career where I am self-employed and wanted to work for myself. I didn't think a 9-to-5 job at a bank or somewhere like that would be as fun. This way I have control over my schedule and able to do things that I love and make time for serving the people of Arkansas.
Wow. Hey, I think that's great. And I just want to tell you, Wade, from what I can tell, now this is not a blanket rule. There are exceptions. But generally speaking, from my experience with legislators, those who have a job back home, those who are able to go back home and do another job as well as serving, they tend to be better legislators because they're able to kind of say, listen, I don't need this job. I mean, I'm here. I'm going to, there's less leverage if you have people that are, I mean, we've seen this recently, with legislators giving other legislators loans, and so it calls into question all their other motivations. Did you vote that way because this guy, gave you a loan when you were financially on shaky ground and that sort of thing? And so when you have a job to go back to and you have your own, independent source of income, it really does make that legislator free to be kind of above the fray, above some of the stuff that is, that goes on down there, that I think the average Arkansan, it just makes us jaded towards politics in general. Would you agree with that?
Well, I agree. In my situation, over the past month, I've turned down 2 or 3 clients just because I wanted to focus on the campaign trail. Yeah. When I could be out making extra money, more money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it certainly is good to talk to you. We've been talking with Wade Andrews. Hey, Wade, if people listening across the state want to support you and they want to turn this blue district right now with incumbent David Fielding, Democrat, they want to turn this red and make this, make Wade Andrews state representative Wade Andrews, what should they do? Where should they go?
Go to my website, andrewsforarkansas.com, and check out about me and the issues, and check out the donate button as well.
All right. That's Andrews, the number 4, or Andrews, the word for, Arkansas.com?
The word for.
Okay.
ANDRSFORARKANSAW.
Okay.
Arkansas.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. Wade, we appreciate it, sir. Thanks so much. Best of luck to you, okay?
Thank you.
All right. It's Wade Andrews, everybody. That's andrewsforarkansas.com. All right, we're going to take a break, going to reset here. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking with State Representative Jimmy Gazaway. He'll be here in studio. Guess what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about Issue 1. We're going to talk about the so-called tort reform, what I call bad tort reform, and we'll tell you all of the players and what's going on. And Jimmy Gazaway is really been on the forefront, on the front lines of trying to tell people how bad Issue 1 is, and we'll talk more about that coming up at 7:33. Don't go anywhere.
Outing out this corruption in the Capitol however I can and wherever I can, because this is my state. This is where I grew up. This is all my friends and family are all in Arkansas, and it's just become insane, the amount of corruption. And, it's sad. A lot of people still don't know about it.
This is true.
Ballinger is going around his district and talking to people, and that's good. That's good. I mean, he should be allowed to do that, of course, but a lot of people just aren't aware of this stuff.
Yeah,
unfortunately, I don't know how.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough when you have, we have a mainstream media here, Lee. That they'll do a story, when they have to about the corruption, but they're not necessarily beating down the doors of the legislature asking them, hey, are you a consultant with anybody else? Are you being paid extra? They're not really pursuing the investigative angle of this as they should be, and it's very ripe for all of that. Lee Evans, I appreciate you coming on. And
do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions. Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we go. Welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. So what do we have here? Yeah, carefully crafted language. My goodness, carefully crafted language. Has anybody seen where you have Governor Asa Hutchinson? He's got this this ad out there where he's talking about 70,000 jobs created. And he has this line in here where he says, "That's why I'm ready to go, or I have gone, anywhere from Berlin to Beijing to tell people how great it is to do business in the state of Arkansas." So, yeah, I just think that's certainly carefully crafted language. I mean, doesn't it sound great in a way? I mean, if you've never heard of the word globalism at all, okay, and you've never heard the governor talk about how, on MSNBC before the election, how Donald Trump may not be it because you gotta know how the world works, okay. Well, Asa clearly has his idea of how the world works, which means going to communist China and bringing businesses here. That's all on hold right now because of Donald Trump. And that's why I made that video. The fact that we made the video, it's up right now at Conduit News on the YouTube page, and it's also up at conduitnews.com. And it just basically says this: Asa undermines Trump-Pence on communist China. Because basically exactly what's happening. And, you have Mike Pence at the Hudson Institute saying what he says versus what Asa has said with China over the years. And you really realize that something is amiss. And the problem is I might not have even made that video had the governor and, the people that he's working with said, you know what, China is not a good idea. If they had said, we wasted some time, but listen, we are in some sort of not only economic but military standoff with the Chinese, and we don't need to do these deals anymore. We need to back out of these deals. Then you know what? Fantastic. That's what happens when governors essentially take a cue from the leader of the free world and the president of the United States. That is not what has happened, and it's got me thinking, what is this actively undermining the Trump administration? When the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, according to reports, says that they are daily in contact with the communist Chinese, assuring them, trying to make sure that they still come, try to make sure that they still, deliver on these deals or whatever, and that to me is offensive. Is that not offensive to you? So when you listen to Governor Hutchinson's ads, it is certainly carefully crafted language when he cites specifically the fact that he goes to Beijing to try to get businesses here. It's in his campaign ad. It's in his campaign ad. Is that not, my question, is that not undermining what the president is trying to accomplish with China on trade and everything else? And I think the answer is, of course it is. But I don't know if the average Arkansan, when they see that ad, is like, what are you going to Beijing for, Governor? I don't know if the average Arkansan, thinks that way. And that's why I made the video. It's an educational tool. You can check it out. It's up at conduitnews.com. It's also up at the YouTube page. And the headline is very simple: Asa undermines Trump Pence on communist China. Yeah, I threw that word communist in there specifically because that's what they are. And it's one thing to trade with communist countries that have terrible human rights records, just like it's one thing to trade with Saudi Arabia, okay? That's one thing. But are we opening up Saudi Arabian factories in Arkansas? What would people say? Why is it okay with China? I just don't get it. I don't get it. Is it because people just are more comfortable with the Chinese and they think, you guys don't have any hidden agenda. You're not trying to take over America by stealing $600 billion of our intellectual property here. You're nice about it. You're friendly about it. You send these guys over here that are friendly and nice. What if the governor was with some Saudi prince and like, oh yeah, well we're pleased that they're going to come in here and they're going to have a Saudi Arabian factory and there's going to be X amount of Arkansans employed. Would people react in a different way? Okay, you essentially have two totalitarian regimes in that case. I think people would react in a different way, right? But it's like we ignore the fact that China are persecuting Christians. They're tearing down crosses, tearing down churches. We ignore all of that. That's fine. It's okay. Come open your factories here. What if it was Russia? What if this was some member of Vladimir Putin's party who'd come to the Marble Palace for these press conferences and sit there, and you'd have a Russian translator, talking about, and here's Asa, and it was that we're pleased to sign this deal. I've been to Russia. I've met with you. I've been to Moscow. I've been telling people in Moscow about how amazing it is to invest in Arkansas. I think the media would have a meltdown, and I don't think that would ever happen. But for some reason, it's okay to do with China. And my question is why? Now, I don't think it's okay to do it with China anymore because of President Donald Trump and his leadership and what he's trying to accomplish by kind of setting the world, right in a way when it comes to America being a superpower. China wants to supplant us militarily. They want to supplant us economically. For this week's carefully crafted language segment, you have this ad of Governor Hutchinson. I've traveled everywhere from Berlin to Beijing. Okay, well, question's got to be, why China? We're going to be back here in just a moment with State Representative Jimmy Gazaway. Don't go anywhere. particular, Lee Evans. He's a Libertarian running for Senate District 5. He joins us on the phone. Lee, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. Hanging out on a Monday. I'm a little wet from being out jogging this morning. The weather kind of stinks, but hey, it's all good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I hope it cools down even more. Muzzleloading season is this weekend, so I'm hoping hoping that the deer start moving. Yeah, Lee, the reason I want to have you on, number one, is because a couple of weeks ago or a month or so ago, your opponent, Republican opponent in the upcoming, is Bob Ballinger, who beat Brian King in a close race.
Yeah,
I wanted to have you on because I made the mistake. I was playing the audio of Bob Ballinger saying no legislator in Little Rock is benefiting from being down there, and of course he got kind of laughed at pretty hard. And I said, hey, he's a senator elect, and that was wrong, and I corrected it a couple times, but I thought, as much as it drives the Marble Palace crazy that, we give libertarians a voice on the program, and we give anybody a voice, really, if they want to have an honest conversation and dialogue. I wanted to have you on, Lee, and I just want to start off, why are you running for Senate District 5?
It's where I live. I've lived in this part of the state for about 2 years now. I'm kind of a newcomer to this area, but I've lived in Arkansas all my life. And I see the everyday struggle of Arkansans. It's definitely not easy. And I'm really thankful for your reporting up there and just all the conduits, every single one of them. I know it's one big organization, and I listen to your program as much as I can, and I read it all and I soak it all up. And it's been a big influence on me, to be honest. I'm not kissing butt or anything. And it's once I got into this and saw how corrupt things were for my district and how far Ballinger is from representing anybody really in District 5, much less Arkansas, I just became filled with more and more fire. And I have a bit of a political activist background. I started out probably as more of a progressive when I was really young. I've seen that movement from the inside, and what's wrong with it from the inside, frankly.
Yeah, what do you think is wrong with progressivism?
Big government in general. I'll give them some credit in that they're honest about what they're for. And my big problem with the Republican Party in Arkansas is they claim to be for small government, yet we still get Obamacare. Yet we still get all these big government programs, not just big government.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Hey, joining us in studio, we got State Representative Jimmy Gazaway. Jimmy, welcome back to the program, sir.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about Issue 1. That's why I wanted to have you on. You have been going all over the state or different venues and that sort of thing, talking about Issue 1 and why it's not a good policy, why it's not a good amendment that needs to be voted for. And so tell us why Issue 1 is bad in your opinion, Jimmy Gazaway.
Well, it's hard to narrow it down. I mean, there's so many reasons why it's bad. But you're right, I have been speaking all over the state about it. And I think primarily, it's just bad for everyday Arkansans. It does several things, first of which is, it limits people's ability to hire the lawyer of their choosing because it limits the amount of money that an attorney can make off a case on attorney contingency fees. And, the point there being, they'll claim that it's to rein in greedy lawyers, but the fact is that if you can't get a lawyer to take your case because a lawyer can't make any money with that case, then your case never gets brought. And if your case is never brought, then those who may have done you wrong are never held accountable, which is exactly what they want. So they'll claim it's to rein in greedy trial lawyers. It's not about that. It's about preventing you from being able to get a lawyer, because if they can prevent you from being able to get a lawyer, then you never bring a claim and they're never held accountable, which is exactly what they want. The second thing that Issue 1 does, and that I think, to me, is just the most disgraceful thing about it, are the damage caps. Issue 1 will cap non-economic damages at $500,000. And so, then the question is, well, what are non-economic damages? And a lot of people don't understand that, because the proponents of Issue 1, one of the things you'll hear them say so often is, well, economic damages are unlimited. You can get all the economic damages in the world. They're completely unlimited. Well, that's true. But what if you're a person who doesn't have any economic damages? What if you don't have a job? What if you're someone who's confined to a nursing home? Okay? They don't work. There's no hope that they'll ever work. There's not going to ever be any economic damage with somebody like that. Mm-hmm. And so if a person who has no economic damage like that is abused or killed, you're talking about $500,000 maximum compensation for them. And so what are non-economic damages? They're the damages that we define in the law as those for pain and suffering, for scarring and permanent disfigurement, for loss of a bodily member or function. So, for example, you lose an arm, you lose 2 arms, you lose all your limbs, you're paralyzed.
Yeah, I saw an article against Issue 1. It was talking about somebody losing their sight. That would be covered as under this as well.
Absolutely. Right? Loss of a bodily function, your ability to see, and then loss of life. And so that's why you hear it so often referred to as the price of life amendment. And you see, those who are opposed, like me, say that it puts a price tag on life, because if you have no economic damage, and there are a lot of people in our society who don't, those confined to nursing homes, for example, then the maximum amount of money that you'll be able to be awarded, because your only damages are going to be non-economic. And so the maximum amount would be $500,000. And what a miscarriage of justice for people who are abused or die because of the neglect of someone else, to say that the maximum amount of recovery that they can receive because the survivors for their loved one's death is $500,000. That is morally wrong. And that's why you see people like Jerry Cox at the Family Council and Rose Mims, not in her capacity with Arkansas Right to Life, but in her personal capacity. That's why you see those folks come out against this, because morally that is wrong.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. I'm glad that you're coming on and you're making these points. You also have an incentive factor to look at here when it comes to, does a business, nursing home, trucking company, insurance company, whatever, do they have an incentive once they have done something wrong that's resulted in a death or disfigurement or whatever? Do they have an incentive to make sure it doesn't happen again to somebody else? And if you cap it at $500,000, the nursing homes are just going to have it's going to be an itemized thing. How many times we get sued if they can find a lawyer?
That's right.
How many times do they get sued? All right, well, now it's just on an Excel spreadsheet. It's a cost of doing business. Every couple of years, we're going to pay $500,000 or less to somebody somewhere for killing somebody or doing something. And once that gets just kind of factored in, you don't really have an incentive to do right. Talk about greedy trial lawyers. Are you kidding me? This is about greedy big business. This is about greedy nursing homes. And I'd like to ask you, Jimmy, and we're talking with State Representative Jimmy Gazaway. We've got a judge who's in jail for taking a bribe from nursing homes, or a nursing home owner, allegedly. Only in Arkansas can you have a bribee, but we still don't have any charges against the briber. But this judge pled guilty for taking $10,000 to lower a nursing home judgment that was against a nursing home. We have convicted felon Jake Files. In the discovery, we know when the bill was filed, I think by it was Eddie Joe Williams at the time, filed this situation's predecessor, this bill's predecessor. He got $80,000 from a nursing home owner right after it was filed. And it's like only in Arkansas do with all of that information, this thing still gets on the ballot under, a lot of, push from, the party that's in charge. And so is that just, they want to talk about special interest. Well, this is special interest. The reason we are voting on this is because of special interest.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, I've heard some people refer to it as, I refer to it as the Price of Life Amendment. I've heard some people refer to it as the Special Interest Protection Act because, you know, the folks who are behind it, I mean, let's just be honest about it. You know, it's the special interest, it's the nursing homes who, like you said, you know, there's a former circuit judge who's in federal prison today because he pled guilty to accepting a bribe from a nursing home owner in the form of apparently a really large campaign contribution. There are the other allegations that you mentioned, and, you know, I think that's under investigation. You know, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to accuse anybody of anything. You know, you never really know. So
Right,
I'm not going to
right.
go there. But, you know, the circuit judge pled guilty
Yeah.
to accepting a bribe. And so, you know, who's behind this? The nursing homes, the trucking association, the medical society, the healthcare association. You know, it's all the normal players. And, you know, like you said, one of the things I hear so often about this is, you know, well, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, and conservatives and Republicans believe in tort reform. So shouldn't I be for this? I mean, isn't this a conservative thing? And, you know, one of my responses to that is, you know, this is not about Republican versus Democrat. This is not about, you know, conservative versus liberal. The fact is, this is the history. You can go look it up. You know, there's been tort reform offered in Arkansas. You can go back to 2001, 2003, you know, back in previous legislative sessions when the legislature was controlled by Democrats. I mean, go back and look at those bills and look who the sponsors on them were.
Yeah.
They were Democrats. The vast majority of the legislature in 2003 was controlled by Democrats. Here's the point. The legislative environment is the swamp, okay? And the swamp is still there. It's always been there. It's still there. It's just the alligators have changed from blue to red.
Mm-hmm.
And the players just, you know, it's the same players in a lot of instances. They've just swapped a blue jacket for a red jacket. It's not about Republican versus Democrat. It's about the special interests trying to get their way.
Yeah, and they want to insulate themselves from having to, you know, to pay out, you know, this money. Let's talk about the other thing this does. It lets the legislature set rules of evidence for the judicial branch. It's a clear violation of the separation of powers, in my opinion. So talk a little bit about that. I don't trust the swamp to set these rules any more than, you know, I trust the judiciary to set them. I'd rather it be where it's supposed to be, in the courts.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the other thing about it. So there are three parts primarily, and I kind of touched on the attorney part. You know, if you limit attorneys' fees where they can't make any money on a case, then you'll have people who may have legitimate claims who won't be able to get a lawyer, who won't be able to bring that claim, and no one's ever held accountable. The second part, the damage caps, of course, which I talked briefly about. One thing that I didn't mention in there, and you talked about being able to hold those responsible for harming others accountable, and that is, not only does it cap non-economic damages, again, which are pain and suffering, scarring and permanent disfigurement, loss of a bodily member or function, loss of companionship, and loss of life. Not only does it cap all of those things at $500,000, which are currently unlimited. Right now, if you went to court in Arkansas, you know, you can be made whole as a victim of, you know, abuse or neglect or being ran over by an 18-wheeler, nursing home abuse, whatever. The courts have the ability to make you whole. If that $500,000 cap for non-economic damages passes, they won't have the ability to make people whole again. But then the other portion of that cap is the cap on punitive damages, which it caps at $500,000 or 3 times the compensatory damages. In other words, the total amount of damages. Well, here's the problem with that. You know, it's we live in an economy of scale. And you may have seen recently, you know, the news reports where Apple was the first corporation ever to reach $1 trillion valuation.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And I think Amazon's right on its heels. You know, Amazon will probably be worth $1 trillion pretty soon. And punitive damages are those damages that we recognize in the law that are used to deter future bad conduct. In other words, they're used to punish bad actors, to deter them from ever doing that thing again. And what Issue 1 will do is it will limit punitive damages to $500,000 or 3 times the compensatory. And I don't mean to make $500,000 not sound like a lot of money, because it is. But again, in an economy of scale, where you're talking about you have corporations valued at $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Many of the Fortune 500 companies, multiple billion dollars. Big Pharma, for example, you have CVS Caremark is buying out the insurance company Aetna.
Yep.
And I think they're my understanding is they're paying cash of like $60-something billion. And you're going to say $500,000 in punitive damages to a company like that is going to deter their future bad conduct?
It's nothing.
I mean, what a joke.
It's a drop in the bucket. Yeah.
I mean, $500,000, again, is a lot of money. But when you're a $1 trillion corporation, or when you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, is $500,000 or 3 times the overall compensatory likely to deter future bad conduct?
They won't change their behavior at all.
No.
Yeah, not at all.
So, let's be real. But the last
That's
part.
truth right there. That's State Representative Jimmy Gasaway. That's a lot of truth. Go ahead.
So the last part that you mentioned, so I wanted to get to that too, which is the rulemaking authority. And, I've said that, this could be maybe the most dangerous part. I mean, it's certainly the most insidious. In other words, people aren't going to recognize its true danger, and they knew that.
Mm-hmm.
But this may be the part that they want the most, because if you can control the rules, you can control the outcome. Okay? So let me give you some examples, like some of the rules of evidence, for example, in a case. If you can control what evidence is admissible in a case, so maybe they change the rules of hearsay to where, you have somebody, well, I know this happened, somebody told me that. Well, you're not going to be able to say that in court. You'll never be able to get it in and get it admitted. If you can't get it admitted, maybe you can't prove your case. The rules of discovery, for example, and that's one of the big ones. Discovery is that portion in a lawsuit where you can request documents, you can make the other side answer questions, you can take depositions. It's where you build your case. It's where you gather the evidence from the other side that you need in order to make your case. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? If they can control those rules, they can keep things secret that maybe not allow you access to things. So, for example, one of the bills that they tried to pass in the past was to make nursing home inspection reports, not eligible.
Yeah, that's hearsay.
To be able to obtain or to use those in court. Or let's say you want to subpoena witnesses to help make your case. One of the things, my understanding, that's been proposed in the past is if a nursing home employee would have to get the permission of the nursing home owner to testify as an expert witness in a case, or something along those lines. And even if that's not exactly what they did in the past, if they can control the rules, that may be the things that you'll see in the future. Now they'll say, "Oh, we don't want to do that."
That's ridiculous. I mean, we can't control what future legislators are going to do.
Right.
Even if we believe them now.
That's right.
They're going to be. They're different people.
Yeah. So maybe not the next session, but what about the session after that?
Yeah.
Let's see where it actually goes. So that to me is one of the most dangerous things about it. Mm-hmm. That's hidden out there. Or another point there, if you can control the rules. You just make it really hard to file a lawsuit. Maybe you have to go to arbitration before you can file your case. Mm-hmm. Maybe you have to, make the rules for subpoenaing witnesses and getting the people to court that you need there so hard, and that you have to go through so many steps and so many days' notice and this and that and the other thing, that it makes it so hard to ever even bring a case.
We're talking with State Representative Jimmy Gasaway about the dangers of Issue 1. We will all be voting on this in a couple of weeks. Early voting starts, I think, is it next week? Or I think so. November 6th is the election day. And so, Issue 1's bad. It doesn't need to happen. This is, special interest dream. I want to give you credit, not only State Representative Jimmy Gasaway, are you going across the state and speaking against this, but you actually tried at the very beginning to stop this using your power as a legislator. You, correct me if I'm wrong, you offered an amendment or you offered another bill entirely that would have done some tort reform, but not this. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I ended up offering an amendment, and I think this is something else important for, the people that aren't at the Marble Palace all the time, who don't know exactly what's going on. It's important for them to understand the process and kind of how all this came to be. There were multiple constitutional amendments introduced this last legislative session. Certainly upwards of 10, may have been even, around 20. I'm not exactly sure of the number, but it was everything from the ones you're going to see on your ballot. This issue 1, voter ID. There were some about education. There are multiple topics and issues about how we amend our Constitution by initiated act and referendum. A proposed constitutional amendment to change the way we do that. There were multiple constitutional amendments offered. Well, where do those constitutional amendments go? The process is that those go to the State Agencies Committee. Well, guess who the chairman of the State Agencies Committee was?
In the House of Representatives?
Yes.
That'd be Bob Ballinger.
Correct,
Yeah.
who was the sponsor of the bill. Nothing against Bob. I like Bob. I consider Bob a friend. I think he really is genuine in what he believes. We just have policy disagreements. I just think he's wrong. He thinks I'm wrong. That's fine. We can disagree. But Bob was the chairman of state agencies. All the constitutional amendments go to state agencies. Bob was the lead sponsor on issue 1, or it was SJR 8 at the time, in the House. It goes to his committee. Well, when I got elected to the legislature, excuse me, the Speaker appoints all the committee chairmen and chairman of subcommittees. And so I'm a new representative. I'm at the Capitol. The Speaker's making his appointments, and I see that I have been appointed as the vice chairman of the Civil Law and Courts subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. And I think oh, this is awesome, and I'm the vice chairman. I'm a freshman, and I'm vice chairman of the Civil Courts and Civil Law and Courts subcommittee. And Clark Tucker was the chairman of that, which should have told me something. You make a Democrat the chairman of, what does that mean? So I go to Clark and I said, hey, so when are we going to meet, like the Civil Law and Courts subcommittee? And Clark just kind of laughed at me. He said, you don't understand how this works. He's like, subcommittees never meet. I was like, oh, okay. Unless you're the state agencies committee. Because what they did was they took all those constitutional amendments in state agencies and referred them to a subcommittee on constitutional amendments. And they said, we're not going to let the full committee consider all the constitutional amendments that have been introduced. We're going to let the subcommittee pick 4 that will be considered before the full committee. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So, at that point, I had filed, along with Brian King, he was the Senate sponsor, kind of an alternative tort reform proposed constitutional amendment. That never made it out of the subcommittee, okay? So they knew which ones were coming out.
Yeah.
And SJR 8.
They stacked the deck to get the results they
Sure.
wanted. Yeah.
So SJR 8 was one of them. So that comes out of the subcommittee. That's one of the 4 that come out of the subcommittee that goes before the full committee. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court comes to state agencies House committee and testifies against SJR 8. And it felt to me as if it was completely disregarded. I mean, this is someone, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the chief judge in our entire state judiciary, telling the state agencies committee, I believe this is bad. They didn't care. They passed it. And so then, after it passes out of committee, which was, I think, called on there was an amendment, and it was called after adjournment to consider this bill and amendment, SJR 8, and they pass it and put it on the calendar for the very next day to be voted on by the full House. So I go back and I'm reading the rule book, and I realize you can't do that. A bill has to sit on the calendar for so long before it can be voted on by the full House after it comes out of committee. And this came out after 4 o'clock, and the rules say if it comes out at 4 o'clock, can't sit on the House calendar for long enough to be voted on the next day. So the next morning, I start making my objection. I say, I object to this being voted on today. Please note my objection. And they did. It's right there in the record. Representative Gazaway objects to this being voted on today. And so I knew at that point, maybe we had delayed it, and I think that was a Friday, and that would have given us the weekend to talk about it.
Right. And that's what they didn't want.
That's exactly what they didn't want. And so what happened was, and what I knew was possible, is that if you suspend the rules, then you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, you know, I had to kind of be on guard, and I was kind of led to believe by some people who had talked to me at that point, like, well, you know, way to go. Like, we're really impressed. Like, nobody's ever used that rule before. But, you know, now because of you, everybody will have to think about this and labor about it all weekend, and we'll vote about it on Monday.
Oh, God forbid that you actually have to think about it.
Well, I wasn't going to buy that, okay? I mean, you know, because I know if they suspend the rules, then they can do anything. And so I'm thinking, you know, maybe it's not going to be considered today. Maybe we'll have the weekend, you know, for members to think about it and, you know, consider alternatives and that sort of thing. And so then one of the representatives stands up and makes a motion to suspend the rules. Well, I know what's going to happen then. You see.
Right. Let me stop you right here, Joe. Will you get rid of? Well, hang on a second. Yeah, we're going to have to take a break here in just a moment. So real quick, we've got like a minute and a half. So
sure.
Go ahead, Jimmy Gasaway.
So anyway, so at that point, I introduced an amendment, and so how do you make this better? Which is really what I tried to do. You know, if you want to target this toward frivolous lawsuits, because that's what you hear about. You know, that's their marketing campaign. Oh, this is about frivolous lawsuits. Well, the word frivolous is not found in the entire amendment. And so, you know, let's focus on how we can actually reduce frivolous lawsuits. Yeah. Let's sanction attorneys who file frivolous lawsuits. Let's allow a judge to fine a lawyer who files something that's truly frivolous. Mm-hmm. You know, that's how you do that. That's not anywhere in SJR 8. That was the very first thing in the amendment that I proposed. You know, if we're going to have damage caps, which I don't agree with at all, but what my amendment did is it made an exception for cases involving death, because that doesn't put a price on life.
It's exactly right. Anyway, I really appreciate it. It's been very enlightening, State Representative Jimmy Gasaway. You've been against this from the beginning, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And hopefully, we'll probably need to have you on again because the way you lay out the case against this is very, very efficient. And so I appreciate what you're doing, and we'll do this again soon.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. Folks, we got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights.
But corruption that the likes of which I've just never seen before, and I've paid attention to politics my whole life, and there's always corruption, yeah. But, you know, big government is the snake that eats itself. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And, yeah, we need some government. You know, I've been working on ballot access for the Libertarian Party for the last few years in a few different states, as well as Arkansas, and I helped get the term limits initiative on the ballot here as well. And so I've talked to a lot of people throughout the country and Arkansans, and look, most people are fairly moderate. And I think really what libertarians need to offer is a reasonable balance between those two sides of the coin without giving up on who we truly are, which is trying to get government out of your life. And
all right, folks, that is all the time that we have for today. I really appreciate you being with us. A special thanks to State Representative Jimmy Gasaway for giving us some great inside baseball. We'll be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, with a jam-packed show that you don't want to miss. The Patriots of Act 746 segment is going to be fantastic. We're going to tell you some lies that the government is told people about your Second Amendment rights. And Mr. Tim Loggins with the Patriots of Act 746 will be with us in studio at 6:33 tomorrow. And you don't want to miss that, as well as other guests. Folks, that's all the time we have. Be safe, Arkansas.